Streaming from a South Anchorage studio on the edge of the Chugach National Forest in Anchorage, Alaska. It's now time for another episode of Reluctant Prophets with a voice from the mystic, C-Spa. Enter into her 1970s groovy rustic sauna turned recording studio where she speaks with the creatives of our age.
Welcome to the C-Spa with me, C, and my guest today. I can't say his name because he's my son and he's a minor, and in order to protect his identity, we're going to leave it open. What would you like to be called?
Oh, I don't have any particular preference. I don't have a code name or anything. I didn't plan that. I was not aware.
Not Wangus.
No.
That's your brother.
My brother. Yeah.
Quangus. Welcome everyone. I have brought my son in here for an impromptu C-Spa recording because we just went to the We the People presentation at a local middle school here in Anchorage, Alaska. And it was very interesting. You know, local lawmakers came to hear the students discuss the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the articles, and it was interesting because the students were well prepared. They read a piece that they had prepared, and then the judges, 3 judges, were able to make comments and ask questions. So I want to ask you this first, because we were both in the audience. What was your biggest takeaway from the We the People event?
Well, I thought for the most part the students looked very resigned to be there. I thought it was very, very interesting to note their,
Do you think it was complacency, or do you think it was a fear of being on the spot? Or?
Oh yeah, well they're middle school students. I mean, I don't think very many of them in that crowd have a great understanding or interest in the Articles of Confederation. So I think it was just a lot of apathy towards the general system and stuff. I thought it was.
My biggest takeaway was that I thought, first of all, vested interest. Your brother was very well prepared, and his reading was incredible.
It's definitely pretty good, yeah.
He used some great words like tumultuous, and the questions that the judges asked afterwards were really high level.
For sure.
And I thought that he did great with his ability to synthesize what they were asking and then reply. So We the People kind of inspired us having this larger conversation once we left about, we the people, right?
Yes.
And the Constitution and history and the establishment of the colonies.
Correct.
And, Shays' Rebellion and what that means versus the revolution and what qualifies as a revolution.
Right.
So I thought a lot of those things were really insightful, and obviously learned a lot myself about the history. But the thing that stood out to me the most was, once again, when they're reading, We the People, it starts off with, all men are created equal, right? And so then we get in the car, and I bring that up, and you and your dad, basically said, well, we all kind of recognize that now was just a historical references to the men, establishing the laws and establishing the country. But me as a woman, right, in the audience, hearing that, I just think that we're left out, right? Women, we're not part of that establishment of the country. And so what I thought was great about We the People is it brought that conversation about, right? And the history of our country and our nation, and it brought about the discussion around slavery between the North and the South. And your brother had a really good point about the delicate nature, right, of the balance between the North and the South and why slavery was allowed. So I wanted to ask you,
right,
because I had my own little pickup there about women are not in, the preamble of the We the People. What was your pickup about all those conversations about history that you felt that little twinge inside as you were listening to it?
I don't know. I didn't have many takeaways. Most of the stuff that they were talking about I had already read or watched videos on, so I don't know. I thought they did a good job, but I wasn't really, searching for any deeper meaning. I was mostly just there to support my brother. If I if I had to, I don't know. I guess it would be, if I had to pick something that I took away, it would probably be the something about the Mars colonies. I thought they all had some interesting takes.
Right, the Mars colonies. That was an interesting, like, tangent.
Yeah.
But is loosely connected, right? Because they're talking about the Constitution.
Loosely connected, yeah.
Well, I thought the funny thing was when we were having your brother do his whole practice, right, in the living room sessions, and he, read through his speech, and then we got to ask him questions. One of the things that I thought he answered really well was when we asked him about the maritime law in space, right? Because they talk about that in The Martian when Matt Damon is like, I'm a space pirate. Your brother actually, brought about some interesting dialogue around international law and who's going to establish what. And we discussed how many countries actually would be able to be represented on Mars. So for those reasons, I think this was actually a really cool exercise for the kids because it gets you thinking about all these ramifications and future directions. If space, colonization is possible someday, it might be in you kids' lifetime.
It does. It gets you thinking for as long as it counts for a grade, and then as soon as it's gone, I can tell from experience that it sort of instantly vanishes. But that's okay, as long as they're thinking about it for like a couple weeks.
To be honest, with you and your brother, especially around the history stuff, I know that you're thinking much more deeply about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Most of the kids in the class are probably trying to just get through the moment. But I thought it was really great that a lot of people came. A lot of the kids in the actual class filled up all the seats for the student body, right? To represent. There was a lot of adults there too, but it was mostly students.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. So I want to present you with this gift.
Sure.
And I know this is totally unexpected, but it's something that I've been holding on to for a while, and I want to tell you just a little bit about it. This book, Bodyguard of Lies, was recommended to me by a very famous man named Jacque Vallée. Do you know who Jacque Vallée is?
I don't have the pleasure of knowing now.
That's okay. He was, he's French, and so he came and was hired by our own government, actually, to develop a program called the ARPANET. Have you ever heard of that?
Not that either, no.
It was the first...
ARPANET. ARPANET.
Okay, I put an extra A on that.
Oh,
that was wrong.
Maybe you did it, or maybe I've redacted.
No, you're right.
One,
you're right. I stand corrected. It's ARPANET. Okay. I don't think it is ARPANET. Okay. Well, he was one of the progenitors of that, for our military to use this network, right?
Sure.
For field operations and whatnot. There's a whole history behind the ARPANET, but he was one of the people that worked on it. Anyway, he recommended this book called The Bodyguard of Lies. Go ahead and read the subtitle.
Subtitle... The Fascinating Account?
No, the subtitle I think is...
The Extraordinary True Story Behind DDay. Oh.
It's a massive book. Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I haven't gotten into it, even though he recommended it. And normally I would read anything that Jacque Vallée says that you should read as a researcher, right, about history. But the reason he recommends this book is because of the narrative that's crafted around D-Day, around the operations of D-Day, of what actually happened, and this particular writer's viewpoint of the historical stuff, which is kind of in your wheelhouse. So tell me what you know about D-Day, because I know you're a big historian.
Yeah, that's me. To be honest, I was more into World War II when I was a young lad, but I know... about Operation Overlord. I know about... I could name all the beaches, probably, all their designated code names. There was an operation specifically that I think is really interesting where the Allies had this massive disinformation campaign going against the Germans so that they wouldn't know that the Americans were landing... Or not the Americans, the Allies, sorry, were landing on Normandy. And they needed another beach to sort of convince the Germans, or rather, trick them into thinking that they were going to land at that beach. So they chose the Pas de Calais because it was the closest point to France, from England. And they had this massive disinformation network, and it was really interesting to read about. And there was that, and then there was another operation that I just completely blanked on, like I mentioned earlier. It was a operation where the Allies had inflatable, they had this whole fake army. I think it was the 1st Tank Corps under the command of General Patton, and he actually led the 1st Tank Corps, which did not exist. And they had these inflatable tanks so that the German airplanes and stuff couldn't realize that the first tank corps, I think it was, did not in fact exist. And that was really interesting because when DDay came, it's I think a well enough known fun fact that the Germans didn't actually think that the Allies were landing at Normandy. Even when they landed at Normandy, they thought it was a diversionary attack. That's how well Allied intelligence and counterintelligence functioned, that they were able to trick the Germans that hard. And I thought that was a very interesting part.
It is. I didn't know that.
No, yeah, it's...
See, that's why I wanted to have you in the sea spa, because
Yeah.
you know the interesting stuff. So it was a decoy.
Mostly, yeah. Well, yes, it was a decoy. It was a complete decoy. And it worked pretty well, although the Normandy was still wrought with issues, but that's neither here nor there.
So were you with me when we did the tour of Camp Hero out on Montauk? I think you were, right?
Yes, I was there. That was a time.
Yeah. What do you remember about that?
Not much, if I'm being completely honest.
We need to go back.
Yeah, probably.
I thought it was fascinating. You have this
Yeah.
whole like town, village, you know, it's like the ruins are left there. There's
Yeah.
still buildings and concrete structures from when they established Camp Hero.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole area is like, you know, there's a bunch of mystique around it because it was like, you know, where the Manhattan Project was developed, was out in Montauk. Do you know that history and backstory?
Yeah, generally. I know most of it.
Well, from my relationship with Gary, you know, he lives out there. So he
Yeah.
gives me all the history that I might not know around Montauk. And I didn't even know Camp Hero. I don't think I knew Camp Hero was out there until he took me out there and showed me. And he also took me to Berlitz, where Berlitz used to live. Do you know who Berlitz is?
I think I know the name.
He was a writer, and he also invented, I think, a certain type of typewriter, the Berlitz typewriter. And he wrote about a very famous book about the Bermuda Triangle.
Oh,
So I don't know if you know or not, but your grandfather and I, back in the day, we were both fascinated with the Bermuda Triangle.
Right.
And when Gary told me that Berlitz, you know, wrote his book about the Bermuda Triangle out there, he took me for a little tour and showed me like where he lived and worked, which I think is really fun and interesting.
Yeah, that is fun and interesting.
So I know that you have other projects to do, but I wanted to gift you the Bodyguard of Lies because it was referred as a good read for the facts around D-Day.
Definitely seems like a long read, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, maybe break it up into with chunks. I don't know.
No, for sure. I have some strategies in my head on how I'm gonna.
I've asked you this before, but I'm gonna ask again because I know that books are very important for both of us. We're both big bibliophiles. But what is a book that you're reading right now that you're enjoying?
Well, I'm reading this book by this guy. I don't know if it's Joel Osteen or if it's someone else. The name escapes me.
Joel Osteen, the church leader?
No, that's
the
wrong.
mega church leader?
That would be incorrect then. No, yeah. That's the
I don't
guy.
know if that's right or not. Is it Joel Osteen?
No,
okay, I'm probably wrong about that.
It's got some E name. I don't know.
Check our facts. Okay, so what is the title of the book then if you don't have the author handy?
It's In Defense of Elites. And I like it so much.
Oh, yeah.
I like it so much because you can't tell if it's satire or not. I can never tell. Like, it's definitely a critique of republicanism, but I can't tell if it's an actual defense of elitism or if it's more poking fun at all sides. It's very strange because there's a lot of self-deprecating humor, but there's a lot of points that he makes that I can't tell if he's joking or not. It's very strange. Yeah.
I haven't read it, but I did find that for you. And when I read the jacket, I was like, oh, this might either be great
Or
a miss.
Yeah.
So I'm glad it's at least got you thinking.
Yeah.
I'm about ready, I think, to dig into O'Donnell's book.
Oh, yeah.
The one about the election between Nixon and...
That was a good book. I like that book a lot. I think I read it like twice.
Nixon and...
Oh, the other guy.
Was it Goldwater?
It was Humphrey.
Oh, Humphrey. Why am I thinking Barry Goldwater? Did he go up against... Who went up against Barry Goldwater?
Johnson.
Okay.
Lyndon.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why I have you guys, you know, keeping me straight. All right.
No.
All right. So, yeah, I found that when we were going through all the books in the garage, just trying to, like, winnow down to, you know, the core collection, I found the O'Donnell book.
Right.
That was recommended to me, I think, once again by Gary. I think Gary recommended Lawrence O'Donnell because he said he's one of the best political writers. And I got it for you because you're interested in politics and history.
Gotta love it.
What is a book that's on your shelf that you have wanted to read and been reaching for, but you just haven't gotten to it?
Many of them.
Top one.
Boy, I would have to say probably, I don't know if it's Flatland. Probably Flatland. I started reading it like a year ago, and I got like through chapter 1, and then I just sort of stopped. And so I've been wanting to pick it back up and sort of finish, because it's not a very long book. So it shouldn't be that hard to read, but, you know.
Number one caution for parents today to be concerned about their 15, 16, you're going to be 16 years old this summer. So what should be their number one concern on the top of their mind?
Boy, there are a few. It always depends on the kid that you have. Some kids are really great in some departments, and some aren't good in those same departments. I would say broadly, just make sure they're doing all right. Just make some checkups, you know. It'll depend a lot more whether you want to regulate them or keep them on a looser leash. That more depends on who they are.
We can edit that out.
Okay, yeah, sure. That more depends on who they are as people, but like the broad thing is every teenager struggles with mental health and self-esteem and all those general categories. It's definitely difficult to be a teenager, but you know, it's not a world-ending struggle like a lot of people say it is. It's not really that difficult, for me at least. But
well, I'll tell you right now, one of the things we didn't have back in the day versus what you guys have is cell phones, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Like we had a house phone that was connected to the wall. I mean, way back in the day, I mean, it was a rotary, you know, and then they kind of went to push buttons like do, 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 do.
Yeah, for sure.
Where you hear the tone. And then we took that quantum leap. I mean, a friend of mine were just talking recently about one of the big things that Clinton did in his administration, and it was deregulation, right? For the cellular industry to come in and do cell phone sales, and that was huge and just radicalized, right? Allowing people to have cell phones in their hand because he worked through that federal communications law,
right?
Which is fascinating. I've actually gone and looked at it and read it a little bit, and to see that he opened that up is really interesting. Yeah. But to see how it's played out, going back to my original point, between what we didn't have and what you guys have and are confronted with, is that we weren't, you know, we were doing all manner of badness, you know, keggers in the woods, parties at night, stealing the car, I mean, stuff like that. And nobody had a cell phone to, like, take a picture and have evidence. Yeah. And it's not just, like, evidence of crimes being done, you know, when you're doing risky behaviors.
For sure.
It's also just, you know, the awkward years, you know, the things that you're not wanting to document, right, in your daily life. But you guys are, like, documenting everything, like, almost down to the millisecond. So with regard to that, we had a conversation recently about a friend of yours, not saying any names.
Sure.
But, you know, she said that her life was kind of, like, radically changed when she got off social media.
That one. Yeah, okay.
So as a parent, right, like, I'm always aware of social media, and you have a social media account as well as your brother and sister. I think they have, like, some secret stuff I don't know about. But parents tend to monitor and police that stuff, right? I mean, you even had one friend in middle school whose mom ran her account, which I was like, wow, that kind of blew my mind on the level of...
Well, she was, there's a lot of mind-blowing things about that one.
Right, but I mean, just in general, are you going to get off social media? Because you said that your friend who got off social media, her life was transformed, and she felt actually a lot more self-confident. Do you think that could be beneficial for other people your age, just to back away from it and do your own privacy time for a while? Or
I think the sites are there for a reason, and you should use them if you feel like they'll help. And for me, it just doesn't really help me. It makes me a self-conscious person and all that jazz. So, yeah, I feel like I'm probably going to get off. If I'm going to get back on social media, who knows? But I'm just going to quit at the end of the school year, and we'll just see what it does for me. And if it helps, I'll probably just stay off.
Test it out.
Oh, yeah. Give it a little test run.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, just wrapping up, thanks for being willing to come into the C-Spa. You're actually my first person I've interviewed, which I'm so excited about. Beside Ozzy, he was at the table this morning, like checking out the pop filter and sniffing the mic, and it's like, okay, well, Ozzy could be the first one.
Gotta love it. Yep.
I was doing voices in the car today when I was driving your sister to school, and the dog's in the back seat, and we can say what his name is. It's Humphrey, based off of famous movie stars Humphrey Bogart. We did not name him. The shelter named him, but we were doing
We probably would have picked a really dumb name for him, to be honest. I'm kind of glad he had a pre-assigned name.
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, leave it in the hands of the experts. We were driving, and I was doing an interview, preparing, and I was like, so Humphrey, what's your favorite movie that you ever did? And I was doing voices, and I threw my voice in the back seat, and I was like, Casablanca, Your sister was like getting a kick out of it, I can still make her laugh being, a ham bone. And then I asked him another one, and I was like, okay, second favorite, and I was like, African Queen,
For sure.
And so I think it would be funny for us to do a parody with Humphrey where we do like a whole skit, but
sure,
that's a little bit more advanced. So, favorite movie now that we're kind of winding down and getting into...
Favorite movie? Well, it was, for the longest time, it was The Death of Stalin, but,
I have not seen that yet. I think I fell asleep when we were watching.
Yeah, we did see it. You were supposed to see it.
You were down in Arizona, right? When you saw it with your brother at your friend's house when you guys were on that trip down into...
Yeah, and then... But so recently, I've been getting back into Netflix through a friend of mine who tells me to watch all this stuff. And I'm not really a movies guy. Mom can attest to that. But
I was surprised that you watched Narcos. Okay, that was like mind blown.
Well, yeah, we started watching it when she came over one time, and I was like, okay, well, I might as well keep going.
Is it good? I haven't seen it.
Oh, well, I thought it was good, but I have pretty low standards, so who knows? Maybe you won't think it's good. I liked that one. My favorite movie though would be Beasts of No Nation, because that one I watched on my own, and that one I really liked.
Beasts of No Nation.
Yes, it's about child soldiers in an unnamed African country. It's pretty good. I would suggest it. I would recommend it.
I want to connect you with my friend Jessica. I've said this a couple times, but she works over in Africa.
Right.
She's a UN person. And
I love the UN, famously very helpful.
Well, I know that you guys are really up to date on all your UN policy or whatever. I'm not so much. I mean, I know how they came about. I know the history.
Oh, no.
I know what their charter is, but...
What is there to keep up with? They don't really do much.
There is a lot involved with the UN. Anyway, so I wanted to reach out to Jess and connect you with her because I think that you guys would have an affinity.
Sure.
At some point. She's awesome. Hopefully she'll hear the podcast and she'll reach out to you.
Hi, Jessica.
Yeah. So, all those East Coast connections.
Oh,
small town, small world. So this has been my oldest son in the C-Spa, and I'm very grateful to him for being willing to come in and open up and share his interests.
Anytime.
Well, we'll have to have you on as a regular to discuss teen politics and diplomacy and
what
history.
Little there is. Yeah.
What little there is. Well, maybe you'll be the one to do the Grassroots campaign around.
Maybe. Who knows?
Teen activism. Well, what was the name of that nonprofit that we looked at that looks real interesting?
Foreign Affairs.
World Affairs. But that's not the teen one. The other one was...
that was a different one, yeah.
Gen Z for Change.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Then they actually have, it looks like a political action committee in D.C.
Yeah. I bet they do.
I mean, to be honest, it looks like a bare bones operation. I went to the website and I was kind of researching, how do these guys stay funded? But
yeah, well, one time, I have a funny story about that, actually. I found this campaign that I really liked, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll join, and I clicked on the thing, because, of course, it's, where we live, there's not much going on in the terms of activism or like anything for that matter. So I go to like check out their Facebook page because they don't have like a Twitter, so I have to go to Facebook, and there's like 2-3 people, and I was like, oh, okay, that's not gonna work. So,
not a lot of roots.
There was
not a lot of grass.
Yeah, there was specifically a event that was scheduled, and it was like, all right, send a like if you're going, and there was like 3 likes, and I was like, oh, so that was something.
I forget who it was who said this, but when I was doing a lot of community activism and policy stuff, it was about, I was working in homelessness at the time, but it was about other issues, and it was about civil rights, and race.
Yeah.
And this was a long time ago, but somebody said this movement has to be done within the community, right? True grassroots means it's not somebody outside saying, hey, this is a need, you guys should do it. That real true grassroots happens from within those communities where something is needed.
Right.
And so I can't remember, I'll try to find the quote for you, but it really does happen from the individuals, like if it's a teen movement, right? And you want teens to be more involved with policy and politics and why they should care about things like voting rights. Because I think voting rights should be moved down to 16. Oh. Honestly, I think good 16-year-old people who are interested in policy should be allowed to vote.
Sure.
But, it depends on education, right? And the willingness to want to vote and being involved with the issues. I recently made a Facebook post where I was talking about Tip O'Neill, right? Famous Democrat, and
famous guy,
in my parents' age more than mine. But I knew of him because he was still really popular when I was growing up.
For sure.
And he was in the news quite a bit. And anyway, one of the things that Tip O'Neill said was all politics are local. So it's the same kind of idea.
Oh, yeah, I know that quote.
Right? Like your own constituency or your own neighborhood or your own local is always going to have issues. But also power, too. So I know you feel like a lot of the students who were there today at the We the People might have been more like, apathetic or, disenchanted by the whole thing. But they were there.
They were there.
They were there in the room. And so I actually felt a lot of promise looking at that, thinking, hey, these kids are interested in their local lawmakers and their local policy on some level.
Sure. Yeah.
I think... But making it like a long-term thing or having the longevity to stick with it, it's got to be about something you're passionate about.
Yep, for sure.
Well, that's been our conversation in the sea spa, and I've got to say, you make it really easy.
Well, I try. I do my best. I'm not, not great for conversation, but...
But you know what? You're well-read, and you're interested in history, and there's always common ground there. So,
yep.
And for a future idea for a future talk, what do you have? Just spitballing.
Oh boy,
something for the next.
Well, depends on what this, what's happening. Like whenever that happens, couple months from now, it's up to chance. It's up to fate, so to speak.
I think it would be interesting to go back and look at Clinton's championing of the telecommunications law for cell phones and how he had to move mountains. But, there's other types of things, like when Bush did deregulations of electricity. That would be another thing that would be really interesting to discuss, and how that changed, the private sector and energy and led to Enron and other things.
I bet. Yeah.
So I'd be interested to talk about those, obviously.
Sure, yeah.
All right. Well, if you have one mantra or one thing that you say to yourself that you would like to share with everybody, what is that thing that you say to yourself in moments of vulnerability?
Well, it used to be you live with the consequences of your actions, which speaks a lot to what I how I view that. But I don't know if that's as productive. So I think the one that I live by is probably just if you have a bad situation, there's usually a way to look at it that's positive, and it's not very catchy, mantra, but it's what I live by. It's like, there's a positive about this. It helps me because I'm a very pessimistic person. It helps to look at the positives once in a while. Yeah.
I think that might be a genetic thing.
Maybe.
Is it more of like a turning lemons into lemonade, or is it more of like looking in the bright side of life? I mean,
I guess like all clouds have a silver lining.
Silver lining.
That's what it would be. Yeah.
Well, mine used to be that which does not kill me makes me stronger.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm trying to get out of that darkness and be more light, right? Bringing a little more levity to it. But I do have to say, like, I think that the pessimism runs deep. Then that might not be your fault. So you have maybe a bigger boulder to push up the hill than other people might.
Maybe I do.
But I have to say, on your dad's side, he's much more of an optimist.
Yup.
He really buoys my heart and spirit at times where I'm like, oh, thank goodness for that optimism.
I've seen it in action.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll say sayonara for now and wrap it up. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for stepping into the Sea Spa.
Sure.
And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Sea Spa brings the artistic prophets of our time together to share space and co-create funkadelic conversations. Listen in as guests discuss their journeys, insights, and dreams into the mystic. A place where writers, filmmakers, experiencers, and creatives of all types are welcome. Enjoy the soulful sweat and soak up the creative steam.